The church was silent, filled with that heavy, expectant hush that comes before a wedding. The pews were packed with friends, family, and whispers. At the altar stood Daniel, looking perfect in his tuxedo, flashing a smile that was just a little too polished, a little too rehearsed. But as the heavy oak doors creaked open to reveal the bride, the sound of a roaring engine shattered the sanctity of the moment. A motorcycle, loud and aggressive, screeched to a halt right outside the steps. Before anyone could react, the doors swung open again. A man walked in. He was wearing a leather vest, his arms covered in tattoos, his face grim. He didn't look like a guest. He looked like a warning. He walked straight down the aisle, ignoring the gasps, and stopped right next to the trembling bride. He leaned in, close enough for his breath to brush her ear, and whispered 6 words that would change everything. "You are in danger. Pretend I am your father." Before those words paralyzed everyone in the church, Lucia's life had been unraveling for weeks in ways few people noticed. Those who truly knew Lucia knew she was a calm woman, disciplined, prudent. She wasn't impulsive. That's why it shocked everyone when she announced her engagement to Daniel only 8 months after meeting him. It was a whirlwind romance, or so it seemed on Instagram. But her mother, Helena, felt a disturbance in the force from the very beginning. Helena noticed the imbalance in her daughter's smile. It was tight, strained, like a rubber band about to snap. Lucia insisted she was happy, claiming Daniel was the one. But the way she gripped her phone when she spoke, knuckles white, eyes darting around, told a different story. Daniel, on the other hand, was impeccable. He was the perfect fiancé, polite, educated, attentive, too attentive. Helena watched in silence every time he placed a hand on the small of Lucia's back to guide her. To others, it looked like affection. To Helena, it looked like ownership. It was a subtle way of marking territory, of saying, "She moves when I say she moves." Lucia never complained. But there were moments, brief flashes in time, where her gaze would drift off, lost, as if she were searching for an exit door that didn't exist. No one imagined then that this feeling of entrapment was growing day by day, like a vine choking a flower, without her finding a safe way to say it aloud. The week before the wedding, a neighbor swore she saw Lucia crying inside Daniel's car. She said Daniel was shouting, his face red, his gestures violent. But when Helena tried to ask about it, Lucia shut down. "It's just nerves, Mom," she said. Her voice didn't tremble, but her hands did. She was hiding them in her pockets. As the days ticked down to the ceremony, Lucia began to change. She started apologizing for everything. "Sorry I'm breathing too loud. Sorry I'm in the way. Sorry I have an opinion." It was as if she was afraid that her mere existence was an annoyance to someone. The wedding day arrived with a clear sky, but the air was cold. It felt less like a celebration and more like a deadline. Inside the church, while the guests took their seats, Lucia stood in the vestibule. She was rigid. She held her bouquet not as a decoration, but as a shield. She didn't speak. She just breathed, deep and shaky, trying to calm a storm inside her chest that threatened to drown her. Helena, sitting in the front row, couldn't take her eyes off her daughter. She saw the slight tremor in Lucia's fingers. She saw the terror masked as bridal jitters. Daniel stood at the altar. His smile didn't reach his eyes. His eyes were calculating, scanning the room, checking the exits, ensuring everything was under his control. And then, the noise. The motorcycle. When the biker walked in, the atmosphere shifted from celebration to confusion. He walked with a determination that made people uncomfortable. He didn't look at the groom. He didn't look at the priest. He looked only at Lucia. Helena felt a chill run down her spine. This stranger carried an urgency that couldn't wait. Lucia saw him approaching. Her face went pale. She didn't know him, but something in his walk transmitted a silent message. "I know." The biker stopped beside her. Daniel frowned, stepping forward, his chest puffed out, ready to assert his dominance. "Excuse me, who do you think—" The biker ignored him completely. He leaned into Lucia. "Listen to me carefully," he murmured, his voice low but firm as stone. "You are in danger. Pretend I am your father." Lucia's eyes widened in terror. She didn't understand. Was this a trick? Was this another one of Daniel's tests? But the biker stood relaxed, calm, as if he had rehearsed this moment 100 times. "Trust me," he added, barely moving his lips. In a matter of seconds, the guests began to stand up, bewildered. The murmurs grew louder. "Who is he? Is he an ex-boyfriend? Is this a prank?" Helena stood up immediately. She felt the tension in the air thicken, heavy and suffocating. It felt like someone had just uncorked a bottle of poison that had been fermenting for months. Daniel stepped forward again, irritated now. "Get away from her!" he barked. The biker raised a hand calmly. No aggression, just a boundary. "Back off," he said to Daniel. Lucia felt her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. She was caught between the fear of what would happen if she obeyed this stranger and the terrifying certainty of what would happen if she went home with Daniel. Just as Daniel opened his mouth to shout for security, the main doors of the church slammed open again. The sound echoed like thunder in the silence. Everyone turned. 3 men walked in. One was robust, wearing a dark suit that didn't fit quite right. He was followed by 2 younger men, also in suits, scanning the room with cold, professional eyes. Lucia felt a whip crack in her stomach. She recognized them. They were the men Daniel used for security. He called them bodyguards. Lucia knew them as jailers. They were the ones who drove her to the store, the ones who stood outside the dressing room, the ones who reported her every move to Daniel. The biker didn't flinch. His gaze hardened. It was confirmation. Daniel tried to regain control. He put on his mask of the concerned protector. "Lucia, don't move. This man is dangerous. Come here." His tone pretended to be soft, but the underlying threat was sharp as a knife. The men in suits stepped forward, ready to grab her. The biker spoke slowly, without losing his cool. "Don't be scared, Lucia. Just look at me. Do what I say. You are not alone." Helena pushed past the bridesmaids. "What is going on here?" she screamed, her voice cracking. The biker stepped between Lucia and the approaching men. He didn't raise his fists. He just stood there, a solid wall of leather and resolve. "Gentlemen," the biker said, his voice projecting to the back of the church. "If you really think you can take this girl out of here against her will, you're going to have to do it in front of everyone, in front of witnesses, in front of her mother." He paused, looking the lead bodyguard in the eye. "Let's see if you have the courage." Daniel lost his composure. The mask slipped. His face twisted into an ugly snarl. "She is my fiancée. She doesn't have to listen to a stranger." But Lucia, for the first time in months, didn't look down. She didn't apologize. She looked up. "Daniel," she said. Her voice was broken, trembling but audible. I don't want to go with you." The silence that followed was deafening. Daniel stepped back as if slapped. He looked shocked that she dared to speak. His Lucia. His silent doll. "What did you say?" he hissed. "I said no," Lucia repeated louder this time. She took a step toward the biker, toward safety. The men in suits hesitated. They were hired muscle, not public kidnappers. With half the church standing up and filming on their phones, the dynamic had shifted. The biker, seeing the tide turn, revealed the truth. "I had to come," he said to the room, "because I received an anonymous message. Someone wants to take you out of the country today, Lucia, immediately after the ceremony, a one-way ticket, no return." Lucia gasped. A tremor shook her entire body. She had suspected it. She had seen the passport applications she never signed. She had heard the whispered phone calls. but she had buried the suspicion deep under layers of fear. "I don't know who sent the message," the biker continued, "but I knew if I didn't get here now, you would disappear forever." Helena ran to her daughter, grabbing her, pulling her into an embrace so tight it hurt. "Is this true?" she screamed at Daniel. Daniel tried to justify himself, stammering, waving his hands. "It was for security." "You don't understand. I just wanted to protect her." But nobody was listening anymore. The truth had emerged in an undeniable way. Control disguised as protection had been exposed for what it was: abuse. Lucia took another step back, away from Daniel, away from the altar, away from the life of silence she almost accepted. The biker nodded at Helena. "Your daughter is strong, ma'am. She just needed someone to see her." Daniel was escorted out, not by police, but by Lucia's uncles and cousins, a wall of angry family members who finally saw the monster behind the mask. The men in suits, realizing the job was blown, retreated into the shadows. When the chaos settled, Lucia took a deep breath. It was the first breath of air that felt hers in a long time. She looked at her mother, then at the biker, and finally at the empty altar, where her life almost ended. "Thank you for arriving on time," she whispered to the stranger. The biker smiled, a genuine, warm smile that softened his rugged face. "You don't have to thank me. Sometimes life puts the truth in front of you suddenly, so you can't ignore it anymore." As Lucia and Helena walked toward the exit, arm in arm, the remaining guests watched in silence. They understood they had witnessed something bigger than an interrupted wedding. They had seen a woman recover her voice. And as she crossed the threshold of the church into the bright, cold afternoon sun, Lucia felt it. Freedom. It didn't fix everything instantly, but it was a start.